I am sure that there are aliens that are aware of what I'm doing. Probably more than one species, because they communicate by mental telepathy, and consequently they can read your mind, and you can't hide what you're thinking even. So they would know exactly what everyone's doing and what thinking, and I'm sure I'm no exception.
But just as children survive the idea of the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus when they become adult, I think that tax-paying citizens are quite capable of accepting the new and broader reality that we live in a cosmos teeming with life of various sorts. The fact that some other civilizations are more advanced than we are may be humbling, but that could be a necessary step in our survival.
It's very heavy.
When was that made?
40 or 50 years ago, back when I was in my heyday. Sometime, I guess. My interest in UFOs was not very great until 8 years ago. When I was Minister of Defense, of course, I got sighting reports, but I was too busy unifying the Canadian Armed Forces to be able to worry about them. So I wouldn't say I was a skeptic. I wasn't. I was an agnostic. I didn't know whether they were real or whether they weren't. But there was a young man in Ottawa whose name was Pierre Juno, and he started sending me things about the UFO file. One of the things he sent me one day was a book called The Day After Roswell, and I found it absolutely fascinating. While I was reading the book, my nephew said, "What are you reading?" I told him what it was, and he said, "Well, I'm a skeptic." A couple of days later, he phoned and said, I was talking to the general. The general, incidentally, was a former United States Air Force general that he had met in his aviation career. And I told him what you were reading, and he said, "Every word of it is true and more." I phoned the general. Before I could even say hello and how are you, he said, "Every word is true and more." And he said that there had, in fact, been face-to-face meetings between United States officials and extraterrestrials from other star systems. And with that assurance, I decided to go public and say, for the first time, of anyone of cabinet rank from the G8 group of countries, that UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying over your head, and said it without any restriction whatsoever.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Clifford Stone. I was a Sergeant First Class, United States Army. I had a secret clearance with nuclear surety. I could get the clearance that I needed to do whatever it was that was necessary for me to do at the time on special operations when I was called in on those. What I'm referring to here is that I was involved in situations where we actually did recoveries of crashed saucers, for lack of a better term, and debris thereof. There were bodies that were involved with some of these crashes, also some were alive. While we were doing all this, we were telling the American public there was nothing to it. We were telling the world there was nothing to it. I'd like to go into detail on some of the cases, about the nuts and bolts cases right here, but I will be available if you have any questions concerning my involvement in this. You can talk to Dr. Greer to arrange for me to get to talk to you. But the whole situation is, we've set back, we've told the American people that there's no such thing as UFOs. I've been involved where we have recovered these objects. We know them to be of extraterrestrials. In 1969, I had an event that happened to me while I was stationed at Fort Lee, Virginia. We went to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. That would be my first exposure to any time that we would be recovering an unidentified flying object. When we went there, we already had people that was already in the facility. We were a backup team, which was supposed to be NBC because there was supposed to be some nuclear materials that was on board this craft. Later on, most people involved were to be told that there was nothing on board it. It was nothing more than just a crash of one of our aircraft. I know better because I was one of the people that approached it with a Geiger counter to get surface readings. I was the first person to go ahead and see that there were bodies on it. That would be the first of approximately 12 events. UFO crashes are not events that take place every day. They're rare. I know we're not alone in the universe. I know that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's evidence that has been denied to the American people.
Yes, well, as we get older and older, I'm 77 right now. You can't live forever, you know. So if this procedure I'm going to have to clean the blood doesn't work, then I've got probably a few more months to make it before my kidneys shut down, you know. So that's kind of why I'm kind of going along with the interview at this time.
You're seeing that what you went through is just too important for people not to know about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just, can we start at the beginning with your military career and just walk through what exactly your experiences were?
Was drafted into the military and got into the U.S. Army. After that, I was sent to the Signal Training Center in eastern United States.
What year would this be?
58. I went through the signal training course. And at that time, I went through the radio teletype course and also the cryptography course, crypto. They had 5 instructors that were getting out of military service. So they pulled the top 5 students, and I was 3rd in the class. So I got pulled as an instructor.
Now, were you at this time also working yet for CIA?
No.
Not yet?
No. After one day, my boss came to me, and he said, how would you like to, make some extra money? And I said, oh, money is good. So he's explained to me that he could put it through. I would have to get a top secret White House Q clearance for the job, And I thought, boy, must be a pretty exclusive thing, And I said, well, what is this? And he said that I'm director for the CIA for Eastern United States, And I said, oh, I didn't know that. And he said, you weren't supposed to. After about 6 weeks, my security clearance came through, and I got my CIA card. It was an ID card, like a credit card, where I could just go up to the door and slice it, walk right in. And my name at that time, I used a artificial name too. Never used my real name. I started working with him on the project he was on, and that was Project Blue Book, which was kind of partially a fraud.
You're saying some of the Blue Book cases were,
Yes.
were completely fictitious?
Yes. But the cases that we got came from, I think it was Fort Belvoir, Maryland.
Fort Belvoir?
Yeah. And it didn't come from the Pentagon, or it didn't come from CIA headquarters. But we would get reports about a certain sighting that they had in Mexico or Italy or something like that. And then we had people that would follow through on it, that would go out and interview the people to see if they were nutcases or if it was real, you know.
So they'd be going overseas frequently?
I wasn't, but I always stayed wise. But the people we had working with us from the CIA would do that. We would get like a new report probably a couple times a week. I was coming into the Army fresh off the farm, you know, so I really didn't have much knowledge of anything, but my boss filled me in on Project Blue Book and what they had found so far as grays and aliens and the Roswell incident.
How did you feel when this first got dumped on you? When you first learned about this?
I was just kind of overwhelmed with all of this, you know. And I said to him, I don't know if I'm going to be able to be a judge of this type of thing. What's real, what's not, when I don't have much knowledge of it, you know. So
What did he say?
he said, well, we have to build the information as we go, and you'll see how this thing is working out.
And then the other thing is, of course, you really weren't able to tell family or close friends, obviously.
No, I couldn't tell anybody. In fact, I had to take a vow that I wouldn't tell anybody. A lot of it for 40 years, and more of it for 50 years, which is up in 2010.
You're doing all this crypto work. You're looking at images, photographs, video. It's 1958, maybe the fall of 58. What happened after this?
At that time, the Project Blue Book thing kind of went pot, you know. If you remember, back in those days, they kind of declared it as a nothing, you know.
Right.
And
They were telling the world all UFOs are misidentifications, hoaxes,
balloons,
psychological issues, whatever.
yes.
Yeah.
So my boss came to me and he says, we've both got a new assignment. And he says, oh, I said, where are we going? Oh, he says, we're going to the Capitol. We're going to be part of the Eisenhower push. He's trying to find out something about these aliens that MJ-12 was supposed to find out, but never sent back reports to him.
The MJ-12, the UFO control group, were they calling it MJ-12 at that time? Yes.
They called us in, went into the Oval Office, and President Eisenhower was there and Nixon, and they said, we called the people in from MJ-12 from Area 51 and S4, but they told us that the government had no jurisdiction over what they were doing. So being a general, past general, you didn't tell them to go to hell without any real good reason, you know. So he said, I want you and your boss to fly out there. I want you to give them a personal message. He says, I want you to tell them, whoever is in charge, tell them that to get in, they have this week, coming week, to get into Washington and to report to me. And if they don't, I'm going to get the 1st Army from Colorado, and we're going to go over. I'm going to take the base over. I don't care what kind of classified material you got. We're going to rip this thing apart.
Eisenhower was going to invade
Yes,
Area 51.
Yeah, with the 1st Army.
So you go out with your superior.
Yes.
You fly out. You land. What happens? Can you describe this whole process? What you saw?
They took us the 13 or 15 miles south to S4 and like different garage door openings.
Okay.
And in these garage door openings, they had like different saucer crafts. The very first one had the Roswell craft in. It was kind of crashed up, but apparently every alien that was in it died except for a couple.
So you see the Roswell craft, and what are some of the others that you see?
Well, the Roswell craft was really strange because it looked like real heavy aluminum foil. We could rock next to it, and you could rock it. The whole thing probably weighed 150, 300 pounds.
Could they tell what the source of power was of this craft?
Yeah, it was like a reverse gravitational thing of some kind. In fact, one later on, I got the mathematical code for reversing gravity in a 3x5 card. I guess there are different types of grays and so on.
How did you see that evidence?
Well, at the later on at S4, we viewed the autopsy film, and then the colonel said, "What we've got in here is we're interviewing a gray alien."
All right, right there. How did you feel at that moment?
Well, I thought, boy, we had no idea we were going to see the real thing. All we saw was film.
You had to have a little bit of heart racing at that
Yes.
moment.
My boss was able to go in and had a partial interview with him.
So what did this gray alien look like? Could you describe him a little bit?
This one looked a little bit oriental.
So I'm just wondering if it looked almost human, what about this didn't look human?
No, it didn't look human as far as the skin tone and basically the shape of it and the size.
How was its head size compared with a normal human, for example?
Brain was kind of a little bit bigger. And some of the nose was very, very small. And the ears were just like holes. Mouth was very small.
Now, why were they bringing you out here at all, anyway, to see an alien? What was the point?
To go back and tell the president they actually had one.
So he did not know at this point
No.
if there was an alien
No.
at S4.
No.
What did you do then at Area? Were you done, or did you have other things to do at
Yeah,
S4?
so basically we were kind of done. Went back to Area 51. They took us into the main building, and there we saw a U-2, which of course we didn't know existed. And a model of the SR-71.
Yeah, the Blackbird.
So, but like I mentioned earlier, it was not a model of the current Blackbird.
It was an earlier version.
But an early version.
Did you go directly to Washington after this?
Yes.
Or did you go somewhere else? How did they get, did you fly regular airline or?
We flew back to the commuter plane back to the air base, and then took President Eisenhower's Lockheed Electra back to Washington.
You and your supervisor,
Yeah.
superior officer, and now you're meeting with the president?
Yes.
Can you describe this?
Well, we met with him in, the second story of the old OSS warehouse building. And Eisenhower and Nixon were there, and also Hoover was there. So he asked us what was going on, and we told him about the alien, the whole situation, and the black projects and so on. And he was just totally shocked. He appeared for the first time to be worried. You know, like he was worried.
I would think that Eisenhower would, I mean, he certainly knew that flying saucers were real.
Yes.
He knew that there were aliens. So I guess I'm just wondering, what would he have been, really surprised about?
Surprised about the black programs. Eisenhower said, got to keep this thing completely secret. You know, can't talk about this.
Your actual name is, the name you grew up with, that was a different name than what you
Yes.
had in the...
I never used it in the CIA at all.
Now, what about today? You're going on the public record, and this is still sensitive information, even though earlier you talked about, security oaths that maybe expire after a certain period of
50
time,
years.
but you're still concerned.
Linda Moulton-Howell's phone call, her phone was tapped, and they got my phone number, and through the telephone company, they were able to find me, and so on.
When they found you, what happened?
I was going to a grocery store. Two guys in black suits come out of a black Lincoln town car and came over to see me. And they told me that I'd better not publish anything or talk to Linda about any more things. So at that time, I did, I stopped.
That was enough to intimidate you.
Yes. Rather remain anonymous. Never show my face on anything.
Really, thank you for doing this.
Yes. This was, I guess, kind of a good idea because I feel much better having talked about it. I kind of feel like there's a load off my shoulders.
Really?
Because I had an awful lot of secrets that I had kept over the years.
As soon as the wire systems had got the story out, information started coming in. Dozens of emails with personal experiences of how people have seen vehicles flying over their homes, and in some cases how they've been abducted. And I get these things from many places, including a lot of other countries. I would not attempt to say how many terrestrials are living on Earth at the present time. I have reports of several species that are here and have bases here. There's one species that looks something like a praying mantis. And then the short grays are the ones that you see in the cartoons. The tall grays look much different. They look more like humans. And the Nordic blondes, for example, are so similar to humans that they can walk down the street and not be detected. None of them are exactly the same. They are way ahead of us in medicine, agriculture, and still, I guess, presumably in technology. There's no question the US government took this whole idea of advanced technology very seriously and started back engineering and spending a lot of money on it soon after the crashes at Roswell in 1947. They have a very interesting way of keeping things quiet, and that is everything is on a need to know. So you could be working in a lab, or you could be making some kind of piece of machinery, and you wouldn't know what it was for. And then the guy that gets it, he would only know what it fits into. And this goes all the way up to the ladder. The rating was higher, the security rating was higher than for the H-bomb. So one of the top, and still is. That's the way it works.
Which technologies are you certain that have been shared with us from extraterrestrials?
Fiber optics, microchips, Kevlar, and improved lasers, and a whole range of things where their technology was much improved or advanced from ours, light years ahead, really, I think. Those were just the obvious ones that were fed into American industry, and more have been since. There had been lots of visits to Earth, probably going back thousands of years, but the level of activity took on a new dimension after the first atomic bomb was set off at New Mexico in 1945. And all of a sudden, the number of sightings increased. And my thesis is that because they know something we don't know, and that is every atomic bomb that is put off on Earth has an effect on other parts of the cosmos. They were concerned about it. And I used this idea that the children are playing with matches. They're afraid that we're going to blow up our planet so that it would be uninhabitable both for ourselves and for visits from them. And they didn't like that idea. So they came down in larger numbers and have been taking inventory of all the American bases, the Russian bases, Chinese bases, all of the bases, doing inventories, finding out exactly where they are, where the nuclear installations, the power installations are, and all that sort of thing. For what purpose exactly, I don't know, but so that they will have the information on tap if we should start doing anything silly, that they might in fact try to intervene. And I would say, I would hope. There are a couple of well-known cases. There was one in western United States where a UFO was looking at their intercontinental ballistic missiles and putting them out of action. And this was despite precautions and fail-safe devices that were designed to make sure that that never happened. So this, of course, was a matter of great concern to the United States Air Force, and they spent months and months investigating it and trying to figure out what they had to do to, if possible, to protect the invulnerability of their bases.
Another case involving nuclear missiles happened 3 years later at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. This site is the largest missile field in the world.
We simply were told not to talk about it. We did not talk about it to anyone.
As a Strategic Air Command launch controller, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Salas was one of the men responsible for the deployment of nuclear Minutemen missiles.
3, 2, 1, key turn.
These missiles were to be launched as a counterattack in the event of nuclear war. On March 16, 1967, Lieutenant Colonel Salas was on duty when he was contacted by his topside guard, stating that there was an unidentified object above the missile site.
Combat control, we advise initiating area.
Salas ordered the guard to observe and report back on any further development.
Then he called back within a few minutes and was very frightened. I could tell by his voice he was extremely agitated. He said there was an object hovering outside the front gate. A reddish-orange, oval-shaped object, and it just hung there quietly. I went and woke up my commander and told him about the 2 phone calls. And as I was telling him about the phone calls, our missiles went into no-go condition, one after the other. Well, we lost nearly 20 missiles that morning.
After speaking with his commander, Salas again contacted the topside guard.
The guard said that the UFO had vanished, basically just took off at high speed, was no longer there. These missiles are controlled individually. So if something did happen within the system, the electrical system, let's say, or the command and control system for one missile, one launch facility, it would not affect the others. And in addition, these missiles are separated by miles. So all these things point to the fact that somehow this object was able to disable these missiles.
Later that day, Salas was ordered to report to the Air Force Office of Special Investigations for debriefing by 2 OSI officers.
And so after we gave him our little debrief, the first thing the OSI guy did is stand up and said, "You need to sign these documents not to disclose any of this to anyone ever." And we signed, and basically that was it. Neither one of them asked too many more questions, and we were escorted out.
Several recently declassified documents support Salas's claims of UFO sightings near Malmstrom. This preliminary report, dated the 24th of March 1967, states that between the hours of 2100 and 0400 Mountain Standard Time, numerous reports were received by Malmstrom Air Force Base agencies of UFO sightings in the Great Falls, Montana area. It goes on further to state that reports of a UFO landing near Belt, Montana were received from several sources, including deputies of Cascade County Sheriff's Office. Another formally classified secret Air Force telex states that the fact that no apparent reason for the loss of 10 missiles can be readily identified is cause for grave concern to this headquarters. In 1993, after Lieutenant Colonel Salas had retired from the Air Force, he tried to gain access to official Air Force records of the incident. In a letter from the Department of the Air Force, he was informed that no UFO report affected national security, making reference to an attached Air Force fact sheet which states, "No UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force has ever given any indication of threat to our national security."
If 20 nuclear missiles going down at the same time, UFOs are sighted, nearly 20, is not a national security incident, then I don't know what is.
The United States forces, in cooperation with the extraterrestrials, had developed both zero-point energy and cold fusion. And these are the things people have been searching for forever. It's sort of like making gold out of lead, which, from what I know of the extraterrestrials, secondhand, from people who have talked to them and visited them and been abducted by them, they want us to save our planet. They would give it to us if the United States Air Force would stop shooting at them. But we've got to persuade the Americans that we don't want a world where somebody's got to master the world by armed force. We want a world where we change our priorities and get rid of these huge defense expenditures and use the money to provide food and shelter and education and clothing for people that don't have any. A different kind of world altogether than what we've had. And that they shouldn't take the extraterrestrials on for size, which they seem determined to do. The government of the United States has lost control of a whole pile of stuff that's going on out there. The President of the United States doesn't even know what's going on out there. And if he wanted to know, they would just say, "Mr. President, you don't have clearance for that project. This is, what it is." But getting back to the point, either the technology exists, which I believe, or they would give it to us if we treat them like friendly neighbors and collaborators in the cosmos instead of as enemies that they were originally designated, then there's no doubt that we could change the system in 10 years.
My name is John Callahan. I'm a retired FAA employee. I was the division manager for the Accidents, Evaluation, and Investigation Division in D.C. About 2 years before I retired, I received a call from Alaska region where the region wanted to know what to tell the media. When I questioned, tell the media what, he says about the UFO, and it went downhill from there. What UFO? It turned out I told him what any government employee would do at that time was to tell him it's under investigation. And then I had him send all that data to the FAA's tech center in Atlantic City. The next day, my immediate boss, service director, Harvey Safir, and I went to Atlantic City. I had just purchased a new video camera, and I videoed the event. And in Atlantic City, we had them play back on a scope, you would call it a scope, a plan view display, PVD, exactly what the pilot seen or what the controller seen, and we tied that in with the voice tape so we could hear exactly what the controller said and what he heard, and we taped it. We came back the next day, briefed the administrator, Admiral Ingen, on what happened. He wanted a 5-minute briefing. After we started the briefing, he wanted to know if he could see the video. We put the video on. He watched the video, the whole video. The next day, he set up a meeting for me to give a dog and pony show to President Reagan's scientific staff and whoever they brought over, and to hand off all that data to them. That morning in the FAA round room, it was either 9 or 10 o'clock, 3 men from Reagan's scientific staff, 3 CIA people, 3 FBI people, and I don't remember who the other guys were, along with all the FAA experts that I brought with me that could decide or talk about the hardware and the software, how it worked. We put on a dog and pony show. We let them watch the video. We had all the data there. We had all the printouts that the computer put out. They got all excited over it. When it was all done, the CIA, one of the CIA men told the people they were now sworn to secrecy, that this meeting never happened and this event never happened. When I asked him why, I thought it was probably just a stealth bomber at the time. He says, well, this is the first time that we have recorded radar data on a UFO, and these guys are going to get all excited, drooling over all this data. I said, well, you're going to tell the public about it? And he says, no, we don't tell the public about this. It would panic the public. He says, we're going to go back and study this. I said, okay. It was what he was going to do. Now, I've told this story many times, and I get sometimes funny looks from people. I have with me the voice tapes of the controllers that were involved, the FAA original tapes. See, after we handed this stuff off to the president's staff, the FAA didn't know what to do with it. We don't separate UFOs from real traffic, so it's not our problem. Okay? I have a copy of the original of the video that we took, which is rather interesting. And once the thing was all over, the reports started coming into my office, but because it wasn't an FAA air traffic problem, the FAA's report ended up on a table in my office. And it stayed there until I retired, when one of the staffers packed up all my gear and helped it move to my house. Also, in a box I found just a few days ago, in my 1992 tax return, I have the target printouts from the computer data, which, so if you wanted to return or look at every target that was up there at the time, you can now reproduce this from this piece of paper here. And it's called the UFO incident, Japan 1648, I believe the number was. It happened on November the 18th, 1986. I'm prepared to go to Congress, to swear before Congress that everything I've told you people and everything that is here is the truth. Thank you.
You removed the soundtrack from the tape before you turned it over to this program.
That's correct. I can't allow the voices of the project personnel to be heard by the general public. There's a very good chance their family or friends on the outside might recognize them.
Isn't your purpose in releasing this tape to expose Area 51 to the world?
My purpose is to expose the existence of the aliens, not compromise these individuals. I made the decision to come forward. I'm taking precautions to protect my own identity, and I don't think it's fair for me to put these others in danger of exposure. In any case, the interview on the tape went nowhere. It was interrupted, as you'll see.
Can you describe for us what we're seeing?
All right, we're looking at the interview suite at S4. It's kept dark for the comfort of the aliens. The figure who is just barely visible in the left foreground is the telepath, and behind the camera is a raked seating area for observers. Although in this case, I believe the only other person present was a military aide. The alien is seated behind a glass partition in a biocontainment area, which is maintained at biosafety level 2, the lowest designation. That's primarily for the protection of the aliens, not us. The theory is that if they were going to infect us with an alien bug, it would have happened 50 years ago. In fact, all the indications are the aliens eliminated microbial and viral life from their own ecosystem long ago. They aren't susceptible to our diseases directly, but it has been shown that microbes can reproduce and form colonies within their respiratory systems, which tends to exacerbate the debilities they seem to suffer anyway in our environment. In fact, you can see here the alien is beginning to flag. The interview was not going well. The telepath was trying to clarify some points from a previous interview, but he wasn't receiving coherent responses. As you can see, the being is in real distress. At this point, the telepath is sending out a message to the medical staff. He's trying to communicate with the alien, but he's getting no response. There's very little he can do. There's no direct connection between his space and the biocontainment area. That's the aide stepping in on the right. The medical staff should be there by now. They're slow in responding. There they are. I have to say the medical personnel at S4 are less than first rate. They tend to be selected for their willingness to keep secrets rather than their medical competence. By the way, he's not shining that light into the eyes. It looks that way, but in fact he's checking for hemorrhaging around the eye sockets and in the nasal cavity. I'm sorry. It's very hard for me to watch this.
Is it fake? I grabbed a frame in the computer and we're outputting it now in digital format, and you can see that we have an absolutely solid picture. What we've done is taken the picture and moved it over so that we can look at the information that's in between the frames. Now, when we look at the motion video, we can see that it still is not bad. And when we have this little indicator down here, it tells me that the original image was transferred using some kind of time-based corrector. These are video screens up here, television, video monitors, and they're off at an angle. If this was shot using a video camera with lines on it, we would see moire patterns up there, and we don't see the moire patterns. So there's a probability that this was shot originally on film, possibly a film stock like 7252 or 7247, depending on the lighting.
The idea that these images may have originated on film is in direct contradiction to Victor's statement that the interview was shot on video. On closer inspection, Delatoso decided the images could indeed have been recorded by a video camera under certain specific conditions.
In this case, I get the sense of it that this was originally created using either film, transferred telecine to beta, but then this is the third generation, or it was taped under very low light conditions with the video gain boosted probably 12 dB.
Even the emotionless analysis of a computer cannot provide a definitive answer. Delatoso's efforts yield tantalizing hints, but in the end, they only increase the mystery.
One of the key things about this creature are its eyes.
Like the other experts, video analyst Jim Delatoso was emotionally affected by what he saw. He took the tape very seriously and offered this personal opinion.
If someone faked this, I don't like these people. I think it's a bad thing for people to do, because if extraterrestrials come here, it's an incredibly important thing to understand who they are and why are they coming here. If this is not faked, I think we've got a glimpse here of a sense of communication with someone who came from a long distance away.
When asked his opinion of the alien interview, Adair was careful to answer only in terms of his own experiences.
If you're referring to the film where it's aliens being interrogated at Area 51, I don't know. I've never seen a UFO in my life. I've never seen aliens pickled in a jar or anything like that. But I know I saw an engine that wasn't from our terrestrial technology. If you look at an engine like that, it came out of a craft. If it come out of a craft, then that craft has occupants. So it's very logical to assume then that those occupants could still be here and they could be interrogating them, or they could have downed another craft since 1971.
Makeup artist John Criswell has provided special effects creatures for many Hollywood motion pictures and television shows, such as Spaced Invaders and Babylon 5. Hired by Rocket Pictures to create the aliens for the recreation segments of this program, Criswell was very interested to finally see the real thing.
By Hollywood standards, I would say it's a pretty decent puppet. Well, to be honest with you, I would love to buy this being real, but it's probably a hoax. Well, I think this is a really cool design, and it's a great concept, but I think I could have done better. Whoever did this, I mean, they could have a job in Hollywood in a minute, no problem. This one has a much creepier quality than the alien autopsy tape, I think. That one I definitely didn't buy just because of the way it laid on the table. There was a couple of things. This actually, whoever did this was, or if someone did this, they were very clever because it hides a lot of stuff. So that's what makes me kind of disbelieve it a little bit. But, who knows?
Criswell thought the alien exhibited movements that would be difficult to fake.
There are moments when this looks very real, and I don't know how they did certain little things about this. So right when I would say that it's definitely a puppet, he moves a certain way, or he'll lift up in the frame and all that. And all these little things are important to the to the character of it.
Academy Award winner Rick Baker is one of Hollywood's reigning masters of makeup effects. He transformed Eddie Murphy into a 300-pound man for The Nutty Professor, and has created monsters for countless films, including An American Werewolf in London and the UFO-related Men in Black. Baker dismissed the tape as a fake.
Yeah, this doesn't fool me. I don't buy this. I think this is a puppet, and you've got a table in the foreground that's hiding the rest of its body. You've got some kind of, whatever that instrument is in the foreground, it's also lit very mysteriously. I think if you were going to record this alien, you would want to see it, and you wouldn't want to hide it behind a table, and you would light it in a way that would show up much more than this. This particular movement, this head-jerking movement here especially, looks very puppety. It looks a little overdone, and very much like a guy with his hand inside this thing. I guess he's supposed to be ill here. Is that what's going on? It just looks like they went to a great deal of effort to hide as much of the anatomy other than the head on this puppet, and I just don't buy it. I would be willing to stake my reputation on the fact that I think this is a hoax. It's very interesting to see them.
In Baker's opinion, there was no controversy at all.
It's a fake, in my opinion. We could build better. We have built better.
UFO expert Robert Dean, on the other hand, had no doubt whatsoever that the tape was authentic.
This is powerful because this is not a staged event. This is real.
In the 1960s, Robert O. Dean served as an Army intelligence analyst at NATO headquarters in Europe, where he claims to have seen first-hand evidence of alien beings and their artifacts. Retired from the Army, he is now a highly regarded UFO researcher and analyst. Dean was asked to view the tape and offer his expert opinion.
Treating him like a piece of livestock, wiping his lips.
Calling on his own first-hand experience for comparison, Robert Dean was stunned and moved by what he saw.
That breaks my heart. I think you've got yourself a piece of legitimate footage here, and I think you've got your hands on some pretty sensitive material. I don't know how the hell you got this. I don't know who you got it from, and frankly, I don't want to know who you got it from. But you got yourself a tiger by the tail with this footage. I would say, and I know that that's one of the things you ask of me, is that you've got yourself some legitimate footage of one of the little guys being interrogated and filmed. And there's a reality to it, and there's a sensitivity to it that literally breaks my heart. But I tell you very strongly, you've got something here that is very sensitive. Well, I know that the level of classification on this kind of a thing is so far damned above top secret that you can't imagine how sensitive this kind of thing is, and how delicate it is, and how tightly the government sits on anything like this.
One of the problems I had when I first went public was newsmen saying, well, have you ever seen one? And I said, no. And then they said, well, then we can't really take you seriously. But my first actual sighting, I was at my place in Muskoka a couple of years ago for Thanksgiving. My wife Sandra said, going out to look for stars. And here was this very, very bright star right out over the bay. We both looked at it, and all of a sudden we saw it change location in the sky by 3 or 4 degrees in 3 or 4 seconds. Well, stars and satellites and airplanes don't do that. They can't do it. And it was a tremendously interesting experience, and one, of course, that confirmed my beliefs that they are real. After I went public, my daughter, who lives in the old house here at Christmas time, saw one go by her window in the cross behind the boathouse. And the family were saying that they thought that the UFOs had come to get me.